would now like to call this press briefing to order and request that we put our phones on the silent mode or vibration mode, and ask that we observe individual silent prayer. Amen. Amen. Welcome to our usual weekly national press briefing at the Ministry of Information and Communication. And sorry for starting a bit late. We know there are several challenges in trying to enhance our national COVID measures. The attendance is encouraging, and I see journalist compliance to the COVID instructions being given. As usual, we'll begin with our updates for this week, some of the key highlights making the news, and after that we'll introduce the speakers for today. And for the update, Parliament yesterday, Wednesday the 23rd of June, passed the Cyber Crime Bill into law. According to the Minister of Information and Communication, Mohamed Ramansouari, this is a historic moment for Sierra Leone, as for the first time the country is having a legislation that is aimed at regulating the cyberspace. The bill attracted bipartisan support in the world of Parliament, as all concerns geared towards protecting people's privacy was addressed. The Honorable Minister Mohamed Ramansouari, who championed this digital legislation, extended his appreciation to all political parties, stakeholders and officials of the Ministry of Information for their invaluable contributions towards the passage of the bill. United Nations General Assembly has adopted by consensus the rollover decision on the question of equitable representation on and the increase in the membership of the Security Council and related matters. His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio, who serves as coordinator of the African Union Committee of 10 Heads and Government on the reform of the UN Security Council, C10, championed the African demand for 2 permanent seats and 2 additional non-permanent seats on the UN Security Council, which is the principal decision-making organ on matters relating to international peace and security. In another related development for the country, the Deputy Director of Finance for the National Revenue Authority, Edwin Conte, has been elected Chairman of the Audit Committee for the West and Central African region of the World Customs Organization, WCO, with headquarters in Brussels. The Western Central African region of the WCO comprises 23 nations, including Sierra Leone. The Honorable Vice President, Dr. Mohamed Judith Jallo, who doubles as the Chairman of Police Council, this week turned the sod for the construction of an ultra-modern police station at Machujan, which will serve as Banff Regional Police Headquarters in Banff District. Dr. Jallo said the project is part of the People's Manifesto fulfillment in constructing an ultra-modern building for police officers to enhance professionalism, effective service delivery, and to improve the condition of service of all police personnel. The Chief Minister, Mr. Jacob Jususafa, has officially launched the rollout of government vehicle fleet policy initiated by the Ministry of Transport and Aviation on Tuesday, the 22nd of June this year. The Sierra Leone vehicle fleet policy was designed to improve operational mobility and efficiency of public servants in their service delivery in a responsible and cost-effective manner. And the Ministry of Finance has on Tuesday this week held a one-day policy clinic on public financial management reforms and internal audit in the public sector and personnel from various ministries, departments, and agencies. Now, in the international front, A press statement issued by the Embassy of the Republic of Sierra Leone in the Russian Federation states that the embassy has disbursed over 1 billion leones as allowances to 59 students studying in the Russian Federation. The embassy in Russia, the release further stated, has additionally received about 400 million leones as stipend for 17 students studying in Pakistan. In another related development, the Sierra Leone Embassy, the People's Republic of China, has announced that the embassy has received the second tranche for over $34,000 for the payment of the Sierra Leone granting aid allowances for students studying in China. The disbursement of the SRG to the beneficiaries is in progress. And that is the update we have for this week. And now for the issues at hand. As you may be aware, the sporting discipline is playing a vital role in enhancing youth development in the country, as well as creating job employment for people with innovative skills in terms of sporting activities in the country. And today with us we have the Minister of Sports, who will be taking us through some of the improvements and so far in the sporting discipline. And I have the honor and pleasure to now invite the Minister of Sports, Mr. Yeleke, who is here with us to tell us more about the sports discipline in the country. And the program will be chaired by Mr. Solomon Jamiu, our Deputy Minister of Information, who also will be taking us through the COVID update in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toure. I just wanted, out of a sense of protocol, to formally welcome colleague ministers, Minister of Trade and Minister of Sports, distinguished Ministers of Trade and Sports respectively, as well as indefatigable award-winning coach for the Leone Stars, John Kista. And with us we also have Dr. Tom Sise, who is the Program Manager for Child Health and EPI and the Vaccination Pillar Lead in the National Covid19 Emergency Response Center. On behalf of Minister Mohamed Rahman Suarez, I want to extend a hand of welcome to you, and as you have availed yourself for the weekly update. So, taking the cue from Mr. Toure, I give the floor to the Minister of Sports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, colleague ministers, coach, Leone Stars, the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First and foremost, may I say or may I register my profound thanks and appreciation to the Ministry of Information for inviting me to this press briefing. Of course, this is not my first time. I think this is my second time. And I hope and pray that you guys continue to invite the Ministry of Sport, since we have a lot of activities ongoing. Thank you very much. I think my task here today is to just tell the nation, because what I do here goes far and wide. The Ministry of Sport, of course, as you all know, has done a lot within these 3 years. Basically, I assume office in 2018, April. Of course, when I took over office, there were 35 disciplines. Now, as I speak, we have 49 disciplines. When I took office, there was, I cannot call an agency, that's the National Sports Council. It used to be, but now it has now been transformed through the Act of Parliament 2017 to the National Sport Authority that is charged with the responsibility to supervise and regulate all sporting disciplines and to re-register again all 40 sporting disciplines. And now, as I speak, we have 49 disciplines. Among those 49 disciplines, I can tell you authoritatively, this is the only government that has, with the exception of, how do you call it, rugby, with the exception of rugby, but the entire sporting disciplines. You know, I need a challenger under this dispensation. This is the only government under the presidency of retired Brigadier Julius Madabio that has funded all of these disciplines locally and internationally. Of course, we are now faced with an alternative to see how best we can prioritize, because now it's not too easy. The sport ministry is not the only ministry under the President Bio government. There are other ministries, and I think the sport ministry has to do due diligence, because out of the 49 disciplines, we have few that are doing very well, and in modern day governance, in this 21st century, you give attention to those that give their best. And this is what we are faced with now. We are going to prioritize. We are going to make sure all disciplines that are delivering, all sporting disciplines are doing well. Those are the disciplines that we are going to concentrate on now. And as I speak, we have few of them. You have the cricket, you have athletics, you have volleyball, you have basketball. To name but a few, we have them. Out of 49, we may prioritize, let's say 20. Sure. So let me just give you a background of some of those disciplines, how they have been performing. Now let's take like cricket. Cricket since 2018, they have been giving us, so many medals and trophies. Their last participation was in South Africa and Botswana. They came with 8 medals with 4 trophies. 8 medals with 4 trophies. Since then, because of the COVID, because of the interruption of the COVID, because of the interruption of the COVID, there has been a problem for them now to travel. And again, you come to athletics. Athletics has done fantastic. They have done beautifully well. They have brought us, I think, 17 medals. I can remember 17 medals. Out of the 17, I think you have 8 golds. That I can remember. Out of the 17, they brought us 8 golds. The rest is silver and bronze. You have volleyball. Volleyball again, they are doing very well. The last time, they had the opportunity of qualifying for the World Club Championship, but they couldn't make it because of visa problem. They were supposed to travel to Ghana to get a German visa, but the German consulate was so adamant, was so reluctant to issue them a visa, because he had a feeling that when once they go, they will never come back. That was the problem. So they were never issued visas. Again, we know the COVID. The only prominent discipline we know now is ongoing is football because of the COVID. You see, football, of course, you can see from 2018, since our inception into office, you know, we ran the first league, 2018, funded by His Excellency the President and the government of Sierra Leone, 2.3 billion. That league turned out to be one of the most watched leagues in Africa. You see, again, there were a lot of, you know, benefit from that league. Employment, business people, transportation, you know. That league brought a lot and a lot of profit to all Sierra Leoneans, a lot. Again, we ran the second league, but because of, again, the advent of COVID, there was a halt in that league, and that league never continued. Again, we started another under the Vandi Kuruma administration. Of course, it was also going well, but again, we had a third wave that has interrupted. Again, the third wave, again, didn't say we should not run the leagues. But you know, these clubs are very, very poor. It's only when they have spectators. The money that they get is what they use, you know, to resuscitate their clubs, to take care of their players, the management. But because of this third wave, they were asked to play behind closed doors. Since it's not profitable, so they decided to suspend the league. So there we are, the big one, the Leone Stars. Okay, for 25 years, you guys can attest to the fact that we have been trying, we have been coming back and forth to take this national team to the Nations Cup. But again, you know, when once you have a president that is a visionary president, a focused president, a president that has the key to open all developmental strides, you know, this is what happens after 25 years. And again, mind you, this is the same president in the NPRC dispensation that he took us to Mauritania. We won home and away. We won the Amica Cabral, the Zone 2, under his dispensation. Again, 94-96, under the same dispensation of the retired brigadier under the NPRC. He took us to South Africa and to Tunisia. Since then, Sierra Leone was nowhere. Again, as the president stated, he was having the key. He went with the key, and he's back with the key. So again, he has opened the door. So that's why, you know, it's not easy. Our way to the Nations Cup was a very Herculean one. It wasn't easy. We went through a lot, especially when our stadium was banned. When we went to Guinea, it was so challenging. So challenging, you know, lot of conspiracy, you know. Of course, as you know, Francophone, you know, countries, you know, they do things in uniformity. Benin is a French country, Guinea is a French country. So guess what? In fact, the first hotel that we booked, believe you me, before we went there, the hotel has already been booked. The Guineans booked that hotel for the Beninoans. They did. We went there, all the securities were against us, everybody. We had to force our way. We had to fight. We told them that this game is not yours, it's ours. It's ours. How can you just behave to us as if we are the host? You are not the host. But that's it. We fight back. So that's where we succeeded. We succeeded. In fact, the day we went, you know what happened at the border? Our players got stranded. But again, it was a blessing for us. We passed through that. We went to Guinea, we were in Guinea. Of course, the reception there, our Sierra Leonean brothers and sisters, of course. We had a very, very warm, you know, reception from them. We went along. At the end of the day, the first day we are supposed to play the match. Could you imagine? We've done the test. 10 o'clock in the morning, we sat after taking breakfast. We addressed our players, you know, motivating them. We had a message from the security officer who happens to be the Deputy Minister of Sport, Liberia. He sent us a message that, congratulations, all of you are COVID-free. All of you are negative. We jubilated, we celebrated. Just then, Just few hours, about 2 hours, we left for the stadium. We are at the stadium after the guys have done their, their exercise. They were not supposed to go to the room, come out and have the match. That was the time we were informed that 6 of our guys are positive. How is that possible? Yeah, sure. So everybody was in disarray, psychologically, the players, all of them went off. So there was serious tussle, fighting, confrontations. So that's how we fight. That's how we fight. We fought a hard fight in Guinea. That's what we did. So at the end of the day, CAF decided to postpone the match to the next day. By then, our boys would have been prepared mentally. And thank God, we had with us, football philanthropists like the Mohamed Kalon, the Babali Kamara, the Manisafa Abulai. They were there to console the guys because 6, and those are our best players. 6 of them. You see? So at the end of the day, the match was postponed to the next day, and we were able to put ourselves together, motivate the guys. We went to the field of play. At the end of the day, we emerged as victors. So, of course, this is just the beginning after 25 years, but that's the promise I made to the president, that we are going to take this team to the Nations Cup. Yes, sir. That's the promise I made to him. And be rest assured, question time, you get a lot from us. That's why I brought the coach with me. He's here. In terms of preparation, Afcon, or any other interventions, you can come in, you ask questions. I think you can get the best answers from me or the coach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Leone. We believe that the entire nation is behind you. That's a well-deserved victory, and we're looking forward. I already engaged them informally before we stepped into the hall, and I said, I have this growing sense of optimism that Leone Stars will do extremely well in Cameroon. And I think our ultimate objective is really the Nations Cup. I have no iota of hesitation that is something that we can do, and the entire nation is behind you. I'm sure later on we'll be having an interactive session during our Q&A or commentaries. It will please the minister or our head coach to say a word or two. May I at this point bring in the distinguished Minister of Trade, Dr. Sandy, to make his intervention. And perhaps just before the minister takes the podium, I just wish to acknowledge the presence of our legendary Honorable Alhaji Afcon, former Minister of Information and Communications, former Minister of Mines, former Senior Advisor to former President Anas Bai Kuruma, and currently one of our strategic advisors for food and nutrition and social mobilization in the National Covid19 Emergency Response Center. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, colleague Minister. The Honorable Afcon, the Minister of Sports, the head coach of Sierra Leone Stars, other distinguished gentlemen and ladies, members of the fourth estate. My invitation here is to come and update the press and the general public on the strides of the ministry to empower SMEs in relation to the National Medium-Term Development Plan 2019 to 2023. First, let me use this opportunity to thank the Ministry of Information and Communication for granting us this opportunity as a ministry to come and update the public and the press on this very important issue. When we took over, we were able to develop the Medium-Term National Development Plan with 4 goals. the work of the Ministry of Trade is around two of those goals. One is a diversified, resilient green economy, and goal 4 is a competitive economy with a well-developed infrastructure. There are a couple of policy clusters that speak to what the Ministry of Trade and Industry is doing. Policy cluster 2 speaks about diversified economy and promote growth, building resilience against external shocks, promoting productivity, and capturing more of the value chains of its products, revamping the manufacturing and service sectors. Promoting an inclusive rural economy. On the policy cluster 3, one of the key components there is fostering private sector growth. There are other policy clusters that speak to some of the things that we're doing, but when you take a look at the medium-term national development plan, you will see that these are the key areas which the Ministry of Trade's work is actually focused on. So what have we done so far? When we took over, the Ministry of Trade and Industry needed reforms, but structural and reforms around its policies and some of the legislation. So I wasted no time, we started looking straight at the policies. For the first time, we were able to pass a legislation that looks at consumer protection. It was lying there, it was developed. Some of the efforts that were needed to refine it were actually what I focused on in the very early part of my stay at the ministry. We were able to do the necessary adjustment and we were able to take it to Parliament, and luckily the Consumer Protection Act is now a law, and it speaks to the formation of the Consumer Protection Commission, which we are very, very soon going to put together. There are a couple of other things. Sierra Leone mainly depends on importations, particularly of our essential commodities. Everything we call essential commodities imported. I mean, the data is there. Over $240 million is spent on rice alone. You take a look at what is happening. So we're actually enriching other nations if we are just to continue trading in this manner. There are a couple of interesting things that have happened within Africa. We were able to organize the sub-regional market, the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, that allows businesses within West Africa to trade with each other. And then, of course, the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which we have already started business under, that will allow businesses also on the entire continent to be able to trade with each other on duty concessions. What would that mean? If Sierra Leone was going to continue just buying and not being able to sell, then definitely our country was going to, or is going to become a dumping ground. And what that would mean on the broader economy is our balance of trade deficit was going to be very huge, and definitely that will have impact on our currency, on our overall economy. So what we tried to do was to take a look at some of the key areas which speaks to some of the key areas that speak to the medium-term national development plan. What we have looked at is to review the industry policy, and we're receiving support from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Support from them has allowed us to review the industry policy, and we're developing a policy on special economic zones, and also a legislation that is informed by the need to expand the country's industry base, focusing keenly on 3 areas. 1, light manufacturing, which are our key competence. 2, agro-processing, and then 3, mineral beneficiation. Of course, we need to be able to produce some of the basic commodities that we consider as essential. Commodities that we should be able to use some of the raw materials that we generate in Sierra Leone, processing them into those commodities that can actually serve not only the local market, but will also serve the outside market, because it's only that way, when you're able to produce enough to consume and to sell overseas, that you will be able to deal with a number of the issues. We are here to promote export, and we are also here to drive import substitution. I think those are key areas that you want to take note of. Promoting export and driving import substitution is going to allow us to offset the big gap that we have in our balance of trade, and be able to help to stabilize our economy, and definitely with consequences on our currency. We also have been working with the World Bank, taking a look at what we do with agro-processing. And there is a project we have, the Agro-Processing Competitiveness Project. The first cohort of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, have benefited, 25 of them. They are into the value chains of rice, palm oil, vegetables, etc., etc. What we'll try to do with them is to support them through training, technical training, as well as providing grants that should be able to transform the businesses from whatever level they are into the medium to large scale. And that has actually led to the development of a couple of brands, local brands, that we're so proud of. You all hear of the paddy mayonnaise, the paddy oil, vegetable oil. You also have the fambu oil, etc., etc. You can see that some of the work we're doing on that project is not only supporting the SMEs, but to also see how we give support to other large enterprises that are into agro-processing. Quite a good number of companies benefited from the first support that we gave, and now we have just finished the recruitment of 35 more companies. The total money that we have spent on that project, and these are through grants and training, is up to $1.4 million. We have also been working on the ease of doing business. We have another project with the World Bank, that is the Economic Diversification Project, which is helping to deal with some of the challenges which businesses face once they come here. And you can see that there has been an incremental progress in some of the work that we've been doing, a couple of indicators which the World Bank looks at to determine whether the country is actually ready for business. Now you can come to this country within 24 hours, you can register your business. There are a couple of things that we're doing with access to finance, of course. The Munafa Fund, which is a big breakthrough, providing access to small and medium enterprises. This one has been led singularly by government. We've put about 26 billion loans into that, and you can see it's a national program. Previously, microfinance programs organized by the government has been more or less political, and it has been going into the hands of people who are not even business people. What's the consequence? Those programs failed, the monies could not be recovered, but prior to dishing out or rolling out this program, we were able to develop what we refer to as an operational manual, which speaks to all the manner and some of the policy issues which are related to the disbursement of this fund. So now we have expert financial service providers who have been in the microfinance sector for a very, very long time. They were carefully selected, and these have been given these monies, and they are now selecting businesses which are deemed worthy to receive loans. And the interest rate, it's amazing. For the very first time, the interest rate is 9%. And I wouldn't want to report that, but a couple of commercial banks could not sign up to the program because, of course, you know, the interest rate for them was very, very low. but we had to do that because our business is to increase access to finance, particularly finance to businesses in the rural area, because one of the key objectives I mentioned earlier for the medium-term national development plan is to stimulate rural productivity. So take note of that. So it's going well. We have recruited the required staff to help with the rollout of this program, and the impact of this program is already huge. The first phase is a way of testing the waters to know how the recovery rate is going to look like. And the second phase, and it's going to be a permanent feature in the budget of in our national budget, and we'll be providing monies to SMEs. And this is going to be like a revolving fund, which the program should be able to provide finance to businesses. The other thing that we're doing is, prior to even having a revised industry policy, we have gone into agreement with a number of big companies that are coming to start establishing factories that will produce some of the essential commodities. We've done 2 agreements with 2 companies that are producing vegetable oil, and you can see now straight the number of vegetable oil importation has dropped. In fact, we have stopped importing vegetable oil because just those 2 companies are producing enough for the market locally, and they're even selling to countries like Senegal, Banjul, Gambia, Guinea, etc., etc. We have Dolax and DC Oil, and they're doing very well. Because of the work which we are also doing with agriculture, we went into a couple of agreements with some big agro-based industries, Afcon particularly, and Goldtree, that are producing palm oil. They're growing palm trees and producing palm oil. Now we have even cut down on how much of crude palm oil we are importing into this country. Because of those 2 companies, they used to import crude palm oil from Malaysia, but now that Afcon, which has doubled its capacity to process palm oil, you've seen that the amount of crude palm oil that's imported from Malaysia has dropped dramatically. So it's helping. 2 other agreements with flour milling companies, Sonoco, and I'm pleased to inform the press and public that we have given tremendous support to the Sierra Leone flour mill that has been shut down for over 30 years. We revived it. We went into an agreement with the proprietor, the CEO, and now they are expanding their production, their factory, to double their production capacity. Now, what you've seen here strategically is doing these factories not only to serve our local market, but to also be able to produce enough for export. Sonoco is also going to be doing a factory that will be producing flour or bakery equipment, as well as training our youth. So there is a 3rd policy cluster that looks at women empowerment and youth empowerment. You can also see that most of what we're doing is really going to target the youth and women. The Munafa Fund specifically is set to target about 70% of the beneficiaries being women. So that support there for women is also an issue that the medium-term national development plan speaks to. We've done agreements with 2 other companies that are going to be doing steel from scrap metals. Prior to now, all of our steel was just sent to China or India. All the scrap metals were sent to China or India. Value addition, meaning all the jobs that we're supposed to create from the recycling of scrap metals were actually exported to China. But now with those 2 companies, one is going to be sited in Sogo, and the other one in Patloko district. And I'm sure Alaji Afcon should be happy that the steel industry is going to be sited in Patloko district. I mean, it's going to create jobs. It's going to cut down on how much iron rods. You all know how much of iron rods we are bringing into this country. And particularly now, you have to know the dynamics. Prices of commodities are going up. It's not only unique in Sierra Leone, it's the same all over. You go to Guinea, you go to Liberia, you go to Gambia, it's the same problem. We've tried to manage ours. But one thing that's really driving the prices is the freight charges. Prior to now, before COVID, freight charges were really, really very low. But now a couple of things have happened. One, there is a change in the dynamics of maritime operations. Now all ships are supposed to be pro-climate change friendly, meaning that ships that whose emissions are quite high are being taken out of operations. And so the very few ships we have that's on the maritime transportation are now asking for more. And also you must have been informed that there has been a global shortage of containers. If you go to China, we're almost paying 3 times what we used to pay for freight from China to Sierra Leone. For instance, 20-feet container that used to come to Sierra Leone at about $3,000 is now almost $7,000. A 40-feet container that used to come around $6,000 is almost $12,000 to $14,000. So you can see that these freight charges are so high that they are impacting on prices of essential commodities. And these are factors that fall way out of the control of any sovereign state. Unfortunately, we do not have our industries prepared for, because if we are producing those commodities, you will not need to actually pay freight for them. You'll see that they'll definitely have a remarkable impact on prices of commodities, and that's why we're looking at those two. We are also working with factories that want to come and do value addition to our timber. You all agree with me that timber is a very troublesome business area. So we have been exporting raw timber, and you want to know how much that has been negatively impacting trade, particularly our export, and invariably our import. Most of what we are sitting on are produced from other countries, and we have to buy them, but the raw material comes from Sierra Leone or from some other African countries. So we're encouraging value addition in timber, and we've got a number of companies that are going to be doing, they'll be making furniture in this country, they'll be adding value to our timber before it's exported. We have Miro, you all would recognize them along the Freetown and 91 highway, that's doing very well there, and a couple of other companies that are coming into the timber sector. We hope that with some of these engagements, we should be able to promote. We have other companies that I will mention here. Sierra Tropical, that is doing fruits, and they are already setting up a plant that should be exporting canned fruit, and also fruit concentrate, which will be sold to other countries. And above all, we cannot just be talking about agro-processing without having a policy. We've been able to develop an agro-processing policy that focuses on some of the advantages that we're supposed to get when that sector is strengthened. We're looking, and a couple of small and medium enterprises are already benefiting from that. We are creating market linkages for those SMEs, and you can see that that is truly creating opportunities for growth in that sector. Yeah, we are on a couple of steering committees working closely with the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Agriculture, and other line ministries to see how all of what we're doing should be able to impact the private sector, because we consider them to be the key drivers of economic growth. You can also see that our public-private sector dialogue that we are holding from time to time with importers, with exporters, with producers, manufacturers, is actually what has enabled us to be able to talk about taxes, to be able to talk about prices of commodities, And I know a number of people will say, oh, there is no price control, but I want to assure you there is a lot of price control. It is not the kind of price control that you would expect, that the Minister of Trade will be going out there in the street chasing people all around the place. But we've been able to set prices for different commodities. I can tell you that within West Africa, Sierra Leone is the one that's doing the very best when it comes to prices of petroleum products, except Nigeria, which is an oil producer. But even Ghana, that is also producing petroleum, the cost of petrol and diesel in Accra today is in equivalence about 11,000 some hundred. So you can see that Sierra Leone is really doing quite well when it comes to those issues. You also see that what is very important is that the stock of these essential commodities in Sierra Leone is already very huge. And the QAP, a Quick Action Economic Response Program, we were able to give 50 million loan facility to businesses, particularly importers of essential commodities. And because of that support, you can see that almost all the essential commodities are fully stocked in this country. We have enough rice to take us down to December. We're not producing that much, but we are actually exporting, and that's why we continue to give support and work closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, particularly with the rice value chain. And I think with those few comments made, I want to thank you all for this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sandy, Minister of Trade. Thank you very much for giving us a sense of happenings in that very critical sector. Our next speaker would be Dr. Tom Sise to talk to us about vaccination, but I would want to preface his presentation with a little update on COVID-19 in Sierra Leone. We are fully aware that on the 17th of June, government announced certain measures to help us address the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. And those measures became very compelling, became quite a social imperative, for lack of a better expression, to help us address an extraordinary situation that we have on our hands. Sierra Leone has gone through several waves. We did go through the first wave of COVID-19 when we saw an exponential rise in cases, particularly revolving around the testing that we did for our compatriots that had returned from Kuwait. And then around January, we are experiencing our second wave, which was also a very critical moment in the history of the COVID-19 response. And based on the World Health Organization alert to third wave of the pandemic, and the fact that our experts were also in a position to thoroughly consider the epidemiological data in Sierra Leone, Sierra Leone was able to reach a determination that the country is experiencing the third wave of the pandemic. Based on that, it was very important for government to assume responsibility and make sure that we do what we have to do to address this third wave, which appears to be very aggressive. And one of the defining hallmarks is that unlike the first and second waves, a good number of persons who are turning to be positive are getting to be symptomatic. And that explains why in our screening, in what we call high volume health facilities, or what we wish to call sentinel centers, we see a good number of people showing up at health facilities and turning out to be positive based on the COVID-19 screening that is going on in those health facilities. So it is important to note, and especially for reporting purposes, that unlike in the first or second wave where persons would have seen an exponential rise, yet a good number of those who were positive were asymptomatic, and so we were not deeply concerned because of that trend. With the third wave, COVID-19 has now assumed a very different and troubling trajectory. The troubling trajectory is not only are we having an exponential rise in cases, but we are also having a good number of hospitalization. And as you would realize, our death rate, our total number of deaths before the third wave was 79. We now have a total of about 86 deaths in Sierra Leone. So we are not just talking about an exponential rise, we're not just talking about case surge, we are also concerned about hospitalization, and we are also concerned about case fatality. This makes the entire dynamics around third wave extremely different from what may have been the case for the first and second wave. Yesterday I had to send a team of cameramen to 34, and I'm happy that Dr. Sivali, co-lead for case management, was in a position to grant us permission, because it is important for us to be showing these footages to the general public to see that we are also getting critical cases. And the fact that we have recorded additional deaths, I'm sure we are all deeply concerned. And so the WHO alert and the epidemiological data in Sierra Leone, and the fact that we also see the emerging trend in our neighborhood, in Liberia, in Guinea, and in Cote d'Ivoire. Even though from the data that is being recorded in Cote d'Ivoire and Guinea, they may not be of the same complexion for Sierra Leone and Liberia, but the fact that our neighbors continue to record cases, Sierra Leone should also heighten its surveillance and make sure we all embrace the stated infection prevention and control measures that the public health experts have advised us to do. At our last update, I indicated that for the period May 25 to May 31, for example, we recorded 21 positive cases. June 1 to June 7, we recorded 61 positive cases. June 8 to about June 14, it was about 225 positive cases. Now June 15 to June 23, it is over 600 cases. If you take the cumulative, we have recorded over 900 cases for the period May 25 to June 23. We are expecting the cases to continue to rise, because that is the nature of what we call, or the experts would want to call, because I'm not a public health expert, what the public health expert would wish to call a propagated outbreak. Dr. Tom Sise and others would advise and explain that better, that what that means is it's not an open and closed situation. That's a kind of situation when you have an outbreak of that nature, you expect the curves to be moving up and down, and at some point when it's the peak, it has to take an upward trajectory until you eventually bend the curve and it starts to come down again. So let's accept, and it is important for us to understand, that the measures announced in the public notice of 17th June are measures that are announced in the first instance based on what we are seeing. Those measures are expected to be progressive if we continue to have a case surge. So that is why in the general discourse, you will hear some people say, well, this thing, oh, they look at them, so a better the government announced lockdown. Government may not have announced a lockdown for now, but if cases continue to assume that trajectory, government does not have an alternative but to bring in additional measures. In public health, they will tell you about mitigation measures, they will tell you about suppression measures. It Because when you roll out the mitigation and things get very extraordinary, it would be important to complement those mitigation measures with what the public health experts would wish to call suppression measures as well. So these measures are expected to be progressive. So let's accept the measures as contained in our public notice of 17th June as the measures that should help all of us as government and as people of Sierra Leone to help to address the third wave. We have just learned, and this adds to the context of our concern, the very deep concern that we have just learned from the laboratory pillar that based on the genomic sequencing that they have been doing, they have now confirmed from 2 female samples that the Indian variant, otherwise known as the Delta variant, has now landed in Sierra Leone. So we got that confirmation from the laboratory pillar, and we thought it's important for us to share that, and I ask our friends in the media to run with this as fast as we can, as deep as we can, as wide as we can, so that the people of Sierra Leone would understand what this means. So once, at the point when perhaps the third wave had started in some other countries, and not Sierra Leone, when we started hearing about the Indian variant, about the Brazilian variant, or even before the third wave, of the South African variant, people were asking the question, is it not the case that any of those variants would have been in Sierra Leone? And we kept on saying, our experts continue to investigate based on what they call genomic sequencing to match the gene types. And from the investigations that had been going on, there was no determination that any of those variants was in Sierra Leone. But we keep on saying to the people of Sierra Leone, once that determination is made, we'll go public with it. And that is why we are now going public with it, that determination has been made from 2 female samples. I would have to confirm whether those 2 female samples whether they are nationals from India or they are coming from India. We would have to make that further inquiry to determine that. Once we have that information, we'll make that known. But suffice to state that the Indian variant, which seems to be an aggressive variant, otherwise known as the Delta, has now made its way into Sierra Leone. The World Health Organization has advised that this Delta variant seems to have become the global variant. So which means it's not only Sierra Leone that may be experiencing this. This is something that seems to have wiggled its way into different parts of the world. We have to be extremely concerned. This brings me to a very important issue, vaccination. And Dr. Tonsisi will come and talk to us about vaccination. But I just want to spend a few seconds on why is Sierra Leone requiring, for example, people who are accessing government facilities to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination before they could access those facilities. The good thing is, or perhaps the encouraging thing is, we have not made that very broad, we have not made that applicable across the broad spectrum of our population. But I will tell you, for a country like Sierra Leone, and a country like Sierra Leone, we can't 100% rely on our healthcare system. If we rely on our healthcare system, I will tell you, we'll be so overwhelmed. We'll be so overwhelmed that things will just go berserk. Our healthcare system is evolving. We don't have the requisite capacity, whether it's human resource, or the necessary infrastructure, or the necessary equipment, even things like, basic things like oxygen. We are yet to have those ones furnished in our healthcare system. So for a country like Sierra Leone, should we have a high rate of hospitalization, and a good number of those hospitalizations will get critical, we'll have to record a substantial number of deaths. We have to avoid that. In avoiding that, the experts will advise what we have to attain is what they call herd immunity. Make sure that we are able to vaccinate a good number of our population so that to provide some kind of immunity. So for some of us who are parents, for example, if you don't get vaccinated, then you could be a medium to transmit coronavirus to your kids at home. We can't vaccinate children now because of the limited number of vaccines that we have. And so when we talk about people providing proof of vaccination before they could access some facilities, we are not doing that because we are targeting certain individuals. We don't want to be discriminatory in any of our approaches, but we believe that one of the key justifications that we have, and which even the Constitution grants us, is that whenever you make a determination that public health is threatened, government has a primordial responsibility to take irresponsible action. And that is why even when we made it some kind of a mandate, we made sure that it is restricted to just a certain category of persons. And tied to that is the fact that as government officials, we have to be the positive role model. Our people look up to us. His Excellency the President set that tone on March 15, when we did the symbolic launch of the vaccines, the Sinopharm and the AstraZeneca. And we saw that followed by leaders of political parties. We've seen key public influencers taking the vaccine. When our people see us do so, we provide a reasonable degree of comfort to them. We don't want a situation where we come to offices and there are people who come and they are not even willing to wear their face masks. We don't see a lot of people, when they enter a building, they go wear their face masks for the police see them or the security see them. Once they pass them, drop them. In public transportation, as they go to security checkpoints, they wear them. As they cross, they drop them. So people who behave like that are a danger to others who seek to comply with the regulations. So we are trying to attain some kind of immunity. We don't have a lot of vaccines. If we have a lot of vaccines, for example, and we have vaccinated quite a good number of people, I'm sure we'll get to a point where measures like that would become redundant. But let us just see. In Russia, for example, they have made it a mandate for what they call service sector workers, which is about 2 million in Moscow. It's a mandate for them, given the fact that those types of workers interact with a good number of people on a daily basis. France, the National Academy of Medicines, has advised the government of France to make it also mandatory for a wide range of professionals. In the United Kingdom, there are now discussions that mandatory vaccines should start for what they call home care givers, and they may wish to extend that perhaps to the rest of the National Health Service, what they call the NHS. Olympics, we see in Japan, they are saying before you could enter the Olympic stadium, you have to show proof of vaccination. We see even for the Euro that is on, to enter Wembley Stadium, you have to adduce proof of vaccination. And people who do this, no matter how highly democratic those nations are, they have seen very good justification why they are providing some kind of mandatory vaccination. Because they believe that unless that is done, the fight against COVID-19 may not be viable. So we want the people of Sierra Leone to understand that government initiates some of these actions not because we want to target people. We believe that everybody has a right to determine what goes into your body. When government talks about polio, when government talks about taking our children for vaccination, we all take our children for vaccination because we understand the public health utility for doing so. So we call on the people of Sierra Leone to understand and bear with us that we have an extraordinary situation in our hands, very compelling facts and circumstances around the third wave, and we all must cooperate to make sure that we address this third wave. So we have an exponential rise, we're having a good number of hospitalization, we have recorded additional deaths. Vaccination is one of the things that will help us to break the chain between case surge and hospitalization or death. just to say a word or two on vaccination as well. And I must commend Dr. Tom Sise, who works tirelessly to make sure that he does so. He has been moving up and down. He's added several other vaccination centers, even in the Western area, to make sure that people get access to this. It's my pleasure to bring on Dr. Tom Sise, the vaccine pillar lead NACOVAC, program manager for EPI and child health, to talk to us about vaccination, where we are, and what we must expect in the coming days. Dr. Sise.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister, ministers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I think Honorable Deputy Minister has already made my work very easy, and I think I'll just build on what he has already presented. And that is the fact that the evidence and the data in this country is showing that we are now facing the third wave of COVID infections. Infections are rising very fast. Cases are being admitted, and we are now seeing more serious cases that require hospitalization. And so far as the remedies that are available globally, the consensus in the whole world is that vaccination is the primary option that we have to be able to control the situation in all countries across the world. And for us as a country, that's the reason why we've also set ourselves a target to ensure that 60% of the population of this country, all adults over the age of 18 years, are vaccinated in the long term. But of course, in the short and medium term, we want to ensure that all adults above 30 years are vaccinated. And we'll be bringing that age cutoff lower, in fact, in the coming days, because we want to ensure that we scale up vaccination as we are now facing the third wave. So far, we've been able to vaccinate about 101,000 people with the first dose of COVID vaccination, and 27,000 people have received the second dose of vaccination. So we are making some progress. Our target population is about 5 million Sierra Leoneans that we intend to vaccinate. So we're still a long way, and like the Honorable Deputy Minister said, and he is actually rightly becoming a public health expert, our objective is to be able to achieve herd immunity. And that is the level of immunity that's required to break the chain of transmission. And if we are able to vaccinate, 80% of the adult population, because these are the people that mostly interact and move around, we would be able to break the chain of transmission. Of course, we are using AstraZeneca and Sinopharm vaccines at the moment. These are the vaccines that we have. We are hoping to get additional vaccines. We are making applications so that we can get additional vaccines of these same types and even other types of vaccines as we move forward. In Freetown, we now have 8 vaccination sites. We have increased from 4 to 8 just to bring the vaccination closer to the public. And the new policy, of course, has increased the workload on the vaccination teams across the city, because we want to focus primarily on the Western Urban, because that is the epicenter of the current cases that we are seeing. So we are making a lot of progress, and we are working with NACOVAC to ensure that we expand on the vaccination program across the country. As we are scaling up in the Western Urban, we are also scaling up right across all the districts. In every district now we have at least 2 mobile teams and 2 static sites where people can get vaccinations. And then of course the mobile teams are able to reach the hard-to-reach communities across the country. the vaccination is not without incidents. We have, of course, incidents that cause some anxiety amongst the public, you know. But as we rightly said, from the evidence that we have, the vaccines are safe, and we are closely monitoring the situation. We are collecting data, and we always encourage people with adverse events to ensure that they report them, you know, because even before we started vaccinations, Sierra Leoneans were having mortalities, were having people who died, and even after the vaccinations, you know, people would continue to die. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that you can have coincidental situations where, for example, it doesn't mean that if I eat cassava leaf today and tomorrow I happen to pass away, then it's the cassava leaf that has caused that. So whenever we have incidents, it undergoes significant, I mean, very serious, intense investigations for us to be able to understand, I mean, what could be the underlying causes. We have what we call the causality committee, which is a committee of experts. We have physicians who would look at any situation or reported incident that is of concern, so that we're able to conclusively indicate the underlying cause of any mortality that happens for anybody that incidentally receives vaccines. What I'm trying to say basically, because just to be sure, is that there are people who might, not because of the vaccines, but people could die. I mean, every human being would die, it's inevitable that we all die. You understand? And by the time we are vaccinated, like 80% of the population of this country, people will still continue to die. You understand? So the question would now be, okay, this person received the vaccine, and then they died. You understand? And there are people who want to say, okay, the person died as a result of the vaccine. I mean, that is not something we can just relate in that way, because you have to do a lot of investigations to be able to make that causal linkage. You understand? So I just want us to have that in mind as we are continuing with the vaccination. And all the evidence we have so far is that no major adverse event has been attributed to the vaccines, right? So the vaccines are relatively safe from the evidence that we have. I want to encourage everybody to ensure that we get ourselves vaccinated, we get our families, particularly the elderly members of the family, because they are the most vulnerable. We hear that the Delta variant is here now, and we want to ensure that our elderly family members are protected, those with comorbidities are protected, because at the end of the day, they are the most vulnerable that could succumb to Covid-19 infection. So on that note, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you, and I want to continue to encourage you to be part of the drive to ensure that our people are vaccinated across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Sise. I noted the presence of Alhaji Afcon, and I wish him to take the floor to say a word or two. He's part of the social mobilization. He's been moving the length and breadth of this country, making sure that people get the tools that they need to keep themselves safe and their communities. He's been very instrumental in risk communication and social mobilization. And I am sure, I have a sense of how busy he is at this time that we have the third wave. So few words from Honorable Alhaji Afcon, and after that we'll have the interaction, your Q&As on the issues. Honorable.
Well, let me thank the Minister for giving me the opportunity to stand here again, talk to you. I came here to talk to you, and through you, to the rest of the population. In Sierra Leone, for the past 15 months, we have been very robust in trying to keep this virus away and out of our communities. While other countries are suffering hundreds of thousands of fatalities, we managed to keep the fatalities up to April, May 79, although that still is a big number. But that was because in the beginning, nobody understood the characteristics of this coronavirus. But as we have an able technical team, scientists and doctors, coupled with the support we get from our partners, the WHO, the international partners, the CDCs, we have been able at least to have some insight into the epidemiology of this virus. This is a virus that can be kept out. It can be kept out of the country or anywhere at all. But it takes behavioral change. We have to shift away from doing business as usual. The virus is unforgiving. The virus looks for weak links. And what are the weak links? The weakest link is he or she who does not wear a mask. He or she who goes to large crowds. He or she who shakes hands and does not wash hands. Those are the weak links, and they're looking for you. It's almost as if this virus has some kind of intelligence of its own. So what I have come here to tell you is that the old adage that prevention is better than cure is never been truer than now. When you avoid the virus, we give less work to our doctors. And we can all do it. I have been in the field for the past 15 months. And we have been able to keep the virus out. But unfortunately, when the emergency, the state of emergency was lifted, and that was for good reason, so that in as much as government is trying to fight the virus and maintain and keep the lives of people, they also have to consider the livelihoods of the people. So when you lock down a country, you lock down a city, you lock down a district, you restrict the movement of people. When that happens, hardship comes. So what we have to do is to walk a knife edge, balance livelihoods and saving lives. But in so doing, we have to be very, very responsible as citizens, responsible as human beings. Believe me, if this disease were like malaria or diarrhea, when you get it, it stays with you. You don't transfer it. I won't be standing here. Because if you die alone. But this disease is not like that. It actually travels through the air that we breathe. So anybody is susceptible, and you are open to be infected. And the only way we can do that is to shut the gate. And what are the gates? The gate is the nose, the mouth, and the washing of hands. When you close those, the virus will not get there. I have always said that the emergency itself is not those people who have already been infected. So far, about 4,000 and something people have been infected. That's only about 0.003% of the whole population. That means 99.997% of the population is still uninfected. So the emergency is not those who are already sick. We know where they are. We know where to take them. The emergency is you and I, to keep ourselves uninfected. And that is why government is taking robust action to encourage everybody to observe the infection and prevention control measures, the regulations that have been put there. If we do not encourage you and you don't do it, government has the right to force you to do it. Some of you will say that, oh, there is no state of emergency. Yes, there isn't a state of emergency. But we do have what is called the Public Health Emergency Act of 1960, which gives government and law enforcement agencies the right to enforce you as long as there is a threat to the public from an infection. They can force you to abide by rules. You can be sequestered. You can be quarantined. Your movement can be curtailed. You can even be locked down. That's the law. You don't need a state of emergency for it. The law has existed since 1960 and exists everywhere. at the beginning of this virus, I saw a video of enforcement in China. The police have what they call a fishing net. When they meet somebody who doesn't have a mask, they will trap you with the net or wrap you up like fish. Put you in the cell. They have the right to do that. Because exposing yourself means you're exposing everybody else. If you have to die, die alone. But this virus doesn't allow it. If you're going to catch it, you're going to transfer it to other people. And I'm sure nobody here will be happy to make sure, to know that the cause of death or infection of any relative or friend of theirs is their own fault. I know you don't want that. So we are here to keep talking to you so that you will change your attitude. Let us do what we have been doing over the past 15 months. Up to April, we were classed as one of the only four countries in Africa that is at a level 1 risk. You can come to Sierra Leone without restrictions only if you wear your mask and observe the measures. But now, some countries have put us on the red list. Coming from Sierra Leone, you won't be allowed to enter their countries. That is very difficult for a poor country that is growing. So for me, I think it is a shame that we had won the game and then we dropped the ball and allowed the attacker to press it to us. I think some of you watched, was it the match with Tunisia and Sierra Leone, or was it Morocco here sometime in 2015? Yeah. We won the match. And then what happened? The ball was going over the line, and then one of our defenders went there, collected it and passed it carelessly to the attacker. And then we had barely celebrated the goal that was going to make us qualify. And then there was an equalizer. We dropped the ball. We have dropped the ball. Let's not allow that. Just as we won in Guinea, let us win again against the virus. And that is within your power. All of us, especially you who are in the media, to sensitize our people. It's education. That's what you need. Just keep telling them what is right. Our people will follow you. They look upon us as those who influence, as those they have sent to school to be their eyes. So you are role models. What you do and what you say is what they follow. If they see you have a nonchalant attitude, I don't care attitude towards this, they'll do the same. And then the whole country is in danger. So I thank you very much for allowing me to come here. We will be seeing you more frequently now in the radios and TVs because the third wave has a big amplitude. And we really want to drop it down so that we can flatten the curve in Sierra Leone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those words of admonition. Without further ado, let's open the floor and interact with the issues. We're deeply sorry we'll have to limit the number today, but let's have our first round of questions. Yes, on this end. Yes. The man with the hair. No, this first man. Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Mohamed Ponce from Politico. So this is for the sports minister. With regards to the ban on sporting activities, and football in particular, will clubs be provided with financial support to help pay salaries of players? Because you alluded earlier that this is like an occupation. This is for the Minister of Trade. You mentioned in your presentation that there is price control in the country because there is this reduction in imported goods. But, yeah. So I'm asking, because you mentioned Jolax and oil, but the price for the oil is still the same as it used to be. And Jolax is being produced in Sierra Leone. Why is that, sir, please?
Thank you. Can we?
I'm Isaac Unison, Wellington newspaper, sports minister. We will not be tired to keep on congratulating you. 2 questions for you. You said you are going to suspend the leagues because of the 3rd wave. And or you are planning to suspend the league because of the 3rd wave. And according to you, the gate fees or one thing, the collections they normally get from the people, the spectators there is going to be absent, and that money is going to support the ministry and of course the sport as in general. How do you think to supplement that issue in as much as sport is concerned? And the other question is that you said you are concentrating on the districts that are doing well and not those that are not doing well. Well, I think there must be something that is happening down there which you may not know. And if you leave those that are not doing well and not concentrating to them, perhaps you might be forgetting other talents that have to keep the sports ministry booming. The directorate of the Covid19, they are targeting 5 million people. And of course, according to what we are getting now, what you have known now, the vaccines that are available, they are very small. I think you need to sensitize the people about your actions on how you have to get these other vaccines so that the 5 million people will be met. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, just take that round.
Thank you, Mohamed Kabaret for our newspaper. Congratulations, Minister. Mr. Minister, 10 of now we've seen what Kista just like given to the nation as a gift. We're concerned for his tenure and that of ensuring the football administration go on through it. How commitment is the ministry towards ensuring there's no more infights into these affairs? And Mr. Sunday, Mr. Minister, sir, you made mention of going into agreement with some companies. I'm interested, I want to know the name of those companies that will be engaged, 2 companies to be specific, that will be doing the steel recycling. Thank you, sir.
Any female? Okay. To the next gentleman.
Vincent, New Vision newspaper. To the Minister of Sports and the head coach, how well Sierra Leone is prepared for the Nation Cup? To Nakova, already Sierra Leone has now experienced the Indian variants. Don't you think it's necessary for government to declare public health emergency so that people will adhere to these measures? Lastly, there are misconceptions with regards to this vaccination. Some people are saying taking the vaccine cannot help you. So what is the reason why I should take the vaccine? So I want the ministry to address on that.
Okay, can we answer this and then we take yours as the next batch?
Sure.
Please.
Too many questions, The mic. Can we have the mic, please? Thank you. Hello.
Yeah. With regards to the first question, my brother, neither Nakovac or the Minister of Sports slam ban on sports. So just because of the 3rd wave, Nakovac had a meeting with the National Sports Authority, advising that we should, put stringent measures in place so that we can avert this deadly virus, this very deadly virus, in ensuring that all games now that has to be played behind closed doors. No sport, no football or any other sport was banned. They were only advising that all football matches now should be played behind closed doors. But because, as you know, these clubs are very poor, they need money. Those takings are the ones that they use to resuscitate, take care of their players and their management. So they decided that, well, instead of we play behind closed doors, we prefer we suspend the league. So nobody slam ban on sports, yeah? Yes, I decided that we should concentrate on sporting disciplines that are viable, you know, those that produce results. Reason being, you know, you have to be competitive. We cannot just afford to be spending money at the end of the day not delivering. So, you know, out of 49 disciplines, we have to prioritize now. I think that's what we have to do. The infighting, of course, you know, stakeholders, everybody, what they have been asking for is for us to go to Congress. Now we've had the Congress 1, 2, elective Congress. Now we have a new president, so I don't think there's any other fight again, except if you want to create one for us. But I don't think whether there is going to be any fighting again in the football family. We are prepared. Somebody was asking how prepared. As a government, we are still prepared. In fact, next week Tuesday, we just set up a committee that will be looking into the preparedness, you know, of the SLFE, the government, NSC, you know. Of course, we've invited big sport personalities, you know. They too should they too should come on board to see how best we can, you know, galvanize, get a formidable preparation so that when we go to Morocco, you know, I will not say spring surprises, but I trust, you know, my guys. We now have young, talented players that can produce results. So that's it, my brother. We are prepared as a government. I don't know on the side of the coach how prepared he is. I think he can make, you know, his own reservation on that. Yeah, Mr. Coach, how prepared?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Hello. Thank you. Good afternoon. I think it's too early just to give you a background around preparations. I've just come back from Conakry. I think we'll sit down with the ministry, the NSA, you know, and then we'll plan forward. So in the next couple of months, we'll have an idea of what preparation will look like. That's it.
Thank you very much. I'll go straight to the issue around price control. There are price controls. We engage price control from different levels. We have engagements with the importers, we have engagement with the retailers, and we have challenges, of course, with the trade monitors across the country, but we try as best as possible to spread it in very thin, to be able to ensure that prices are not going in ways that would be out of control. I'll address a couple of things. I mean, we did an agreement with Jolax, and it's not only with Jolax. There is an agreement with Kisi Oil. You can see, you said that price of vegetable oil has not come down. Yes, it should have even gone up, and Sierra Leone is doing better. I mean, Jolax is producing vegetable oil here, and Senegal and the Gambia are buying from us now. And if you see that our vegetable oil is doing better in those markets, it's a clear indication that when it comes to pricing, we're doing better. We are also looking at a couple of other items. I know Iron Road is one of the items that prices are going up for, and when you take a look at two factors, one, it's not only the freights that are going up for Iron Road, the containers are not there, and we have been working very closely with the importers to see how we bring them together so that 3 or 4 importers will go and get the whole shipload of iron ore. Until we have the 2 factories starting to produce, then that's what we have to be doing. But you can also agree with me that the iron ore price has gone up on the global market. Prior to now, in fact before COVID it was around $90 a metric ton, but now it has gone up to $200, $210 per metric ton. We've done those 2 agreements. We have Odav multi-industry that's not only going to be looking at iron rods, they're going to be doing all forms of irons, the square bars, the rods, different sizes. That one is going to be established in Sobot. They have already acquired around 150 acres of land. As I speak to you, work is currently ongoing. After the agreement, they have already put on ship over 15 containers of equipment that they should be coming to install on that facility. And then you have ferrofabric that's going to establish the steel industry in Bow. They're already in Monrovia, and when it comes to their energy needs, they are going to be providing them. So they'll be coming with generators that will be using HFO. So they should be able to generate enough energy and even sell to the communities where they are. And ferrofabric is not only going to be doing iron ore, they'll be doing plastic recycling. They'll also be establishing a cement factory in this area. With the price of cement, you can see we're doing far better than any other country within the sub-region. The reason is our engagement with the private sector. In fact, we have signed another agreement with another company that's coming to be packaging and then in the medium term be producing cement. And because of those agreements, let me just be very practical here. You realize that prior to COVID, the wholesale price of cement for the imported was at 62,000 euros per bag. Dangote was going at 60,000 euros per bag, and Leone was between 58 to 60,000 euros. What happened, and it continues to happen, the freight charges have increased from the time prior to COVID from $20 to about $42. And when you check what that means, 1 metric ton of cement is about 20 bags. So we're expecting at least a bag of cement to have gone up by $1. Converting $1 to Leone's is about 10,000, 10 to 15,000. Because we're talking about a difference of almost $22. So you would have expected the imported cement to be sold at wholesale around 72,000 euros. But currently the cement wholesale is selling at 66,000. Dangote is selling at 64,000, the wholesale. And Leone is going at around 62,000. So you can really see that with these engagements, and each time there's going to be a review of these prices, we all come back to sit together and look at which parameters have changed. We try to be as practical as possible, noting that we cannot also squeeze them and limit the ability to import more, while also ensuring that we'll not allow them to push the price in a way that will have huge impact on livelihoods of the public. Thank you.
We had a question on vaccination and not.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Okay.
Okay, I can start. Okay, after you talk.
Yes, so I think the first concern about how do we try to get additional doses. I think my response to that would be that NACOVAC and the Ministry of Health are having engagements to try to mobilize resources for additional doses of vaccines from donor partners as well as from government. But one of the things that we need to also note is that our likelihood of getting the right resources for vaccines also depends on our utilization of the vaccines. A couple of weeks ago, the utilization was very low. And in fact, there were a lot of countries that were reaching out to Sierra Leone that, Sierra Leone, if you don't want to use your vaccines, please send it over to us so that we can use it. Because these vaccines are very precious commodities. But unfortunately, it's like in Sierra Leone, there was a time when people were just looking at them and not taking them very seriously. But there are a lot of countries that are very much interested. So it's very important for us to ensure that we fully utilize the doses that we have, and it gives us more justification, to try to mobilize additional doses. Somebody was saying that people are saying the vaccination does not help people. All the evidence around shows that when people get vaccinated, your likelihood of catching COVID-19 reduces significantly. It is not completely eliminated. I think we need to take note of that. That you can still get infected, but the likelihood of getting infected reduces significantly. The possibility or likelihood of having a mortality or a death, you understand, from COVID is nearly zero. You understand? So that is the evidence that is available, and that is why getting vaccinated is very, very important. Because it reduces your chances of getting infected and reduces your chances of getting an adverse outcome in the event that somebody gets infected. So those are the benefits that we need to have in mind. But even as much as the fact that you can still get infected, that's why we say we continue to wear a mask, you understand, and to ensure that we continue to stay protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Somebody was asking whether government would not consider the need to reintroduce a state of public health emergency in light of the Indian or Delta variant that is now in Sierra Leone. As I mentioned earlier on, the measures that we currently have, as contained in our public notice of 17th June, these measures are formulated or introduced to help us address the third wave. So once it was close to the 12 months when the state of public health emergency was collapsed, we saw the handwriting on the wall clearly from State House that there wasn't so much appetite to prolong the state of public health emergency further. And that's because, like Honorable Alhaji Afcon mentioned, government has always tried to maintain this very fine and delicate balance between saving lives and sustaining livelihoods. Government bears in mind that COVID-19 does not only affect public health, but also has massive socioeconomic costs or implications attached to that. So we have to bear that in mind as well. Having said that, all options will always continue to be on the table when dealing with a pandemic, public health outbreak of this nature. And as I said, the measures would be progressive depending on the trajectory of cases. Should we be in a position to keep COVID-19 in check and reverse the trend as it is, a state of public health emergency should not be something that will be an option on the table. But if the trend continues as it is, notwithstanding government's inclination, the fact that government may not have had an inclination to have this prolonged, I'm sure Sierra Leoneans across the broad spectrum would invite government's attention to clearly consider a state of public health emergency. It's not something that is yet looked at, and that is why we are calling on the people of Sierra Leone, as Alhaji Afcon said, to cooperate. Let's make sure we wear the face mask all the time to cover the nose, the mouth, the chin. Let's make sure we wash our hands all the time with soap and clean water. But if you have your alcohol-based hand sanitizer, you use it. And let's continue to maintain social distancing. If we embrace those key public health measures, I'm sure we should be able to keep COVID-19 in check. And then government can dispense with any additional measure. So it is left with us. The challenge is ours, the responsibility is ours. Government will play its part, the Ministry of Health and Sanitation, NACOVAC, and our DCOVAX will play our part, but as individuals we also bear personal responsibility for this. So the extent to which such an option may be considered or entertained depends on, as Alhaji Afcon has said, our behavioral tendencies. If our behavioral inclinations and attitudes are consistent with what the public health experts are saying, I'm sure all of us could dispense with any additional measure. I just wish to state that in terms of vaccination, and as Dr. Tomsisi has said, Sierra Leoneans seem to have an appetite for vaccine. We don't seem to have vaccine hesitancy in the kind of proportion that people are magnifying. Because in the Mano River Union countries, for example, Sierra Leone has vaccinated more people even than our neighbors in Guinea, Liberia, and La Côte d'Ivoire. So this speaks to our resilience and the fact that we have an inclination for public health. So if we are to have more vaccines, I'm sure our people would go for those vaccines. And I want to assure all of us that government continues to explore through avenues, diplomatically and otherwise, to access more vaccines. We are knocking doors. We continue to call on the People's Republic of China, whom it pleased to donate 200,000 Sinopharm vaccines, and we have an indication that we'll have more not too long from now. And we're also knocking doors through the COVAX facility and other facilities, and perhaps also looking at other vaccine sources that we don't have yet in Sierra Leone. So we have many strands we are looking at to complement the existing stock that we have, and we believe that in the not too distant future we should be able to land additional vaccines. So let us take this message to our people that the vaccines in Sierra Leone, whether it's Sinopharm or AstraZeneca, those vaccines have met safety and efficacy standards. Even the Sinopharm that some people may have been saying, hey, but up to now WHO not approved by it, it had been approved. So both Sinopharm and AstraZeneca are safe and efficacious, and as Dr. Tomsisi said, any vaccine that you take, even the basic medication that we take, some people will report side effects. For us, we have a national causality committee that is investigating any side effect, and we are calling on anybody who would have a side effect after taking the vaccination. Please call 117. Or there are numbers that are given out in our public notices on vaccination. We'll try to bring them out again for public consumption. If you can't access NACOVAC or any of the NACOVAC officials, you can go to your doctor or physician and you will have the requisite advice. That connection will be made with NACOVAC. But rest assured, for any adverse event following immunization, those ones will be investigated. And we have two last questions and we close. 3 questions. Gentlemen, if we make them, how many hands do we have? 4? Okay, let's make them as fast as we can.
Okay, my question is for the Minister of Sports. You talked about the Ministry of Sports funding more sports discipline, and you included volleyball in it. But some days ago, the volleyball team was supposed to travel to Morocco for their Olympic qualifiers, but missed the deadline due to, according to a lot of reports, was because of funding. So what have you got to say about that?
Yeah, my question is in relation to this issue going around with some players who played for the national team and still did not benefit from the 100 million euros and then they pull out of that. What is really the issue? What I want to know is who submitted the names or how or what happened when they were there. I think 8 of them. And then in addition to us that now NOC also is in preparation and also the side of the volleyball also the benefit in the Olympic qualifiers. So what is the ministry doing now in ensuring that the NOC will go in for the Olympic? Thank you.
The last 2?
Yes.
Those are all. Okay, yes.
Yeah, Doctor, I just want to ask you a simple question about, you make mention about freight charges, and we have our local charges. Can you distinguish what really is the problem between the freight charges and local charges with regard to inflation, and also the midterm development you've passed on Parliament? That's a very good one for consumer. How sustainable is that going to be? How the consumer is going to benefit from that one? Thank you.
Thank Thank you. Let's have responses. Who goes first?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
Mr. Yellow.
One more question, sir.
Please.
My name is Mohamed Kamara. I write for New Citizen newspaper. In relation to the Sierra Leone and Guinea match, you made it clear on 19.1 that
Guinea match?
sorry, the Sierra Leone and Benin match.
Benin, okay, in Guinea, okay.
You made it clear on 19.1 that the players underwent COVID-19 test before they left the shores of Sierra Leone, and you did say about 4 of them were tested positive. So I want to know, why did you allow those 4 players to travel with the team? And in return, the second COVID test that they did in Guinea, we also found out that about 6 players were tested positive. As a responsible agency, right? What have you done to see how best you can isolate them from the rest of the public as they are about to prepare for the Afcon in Cameroon? Thank you.
Can I go first on this, Minister? Because this is COVID, so let's get COVID out of the way so our people are safe to deal with the other issues. Thank you so much for that. I was on 98.1 indeed. The facts as they were was that the team, I think, requested for a test, I think, on the evening of Friday, and the following morning or around midday they had already left for Conakry, Guinea. So whilst in Guinea, I would assure you that the necessary transmission was done, and we are reliably informed the necessary protocols around positivity were observed by the delegation. Whatever test was now done in Guinea, that was outside the jurisdiction of Sierra Leone, and we do not want to speak to that. But I want to assure you that even with the delegation that is here, whosoever may have been positive from any Guinean test, we trust that the officials from the delegation have taken the necessary steps to make sure that the rest of the delegation is safe and the people of Sierra Leone are safe. So NACOVAC continues to work with that delegation, and we want to assure the people of Sierra Leone that they are not in jeopardy at all.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. With regards to volleyball, the issue of volleyball has to do with compliance. Okay. Basically, this is what I always say, that you must comply to the rules and regulations of the ministry, and that the Ministry of Sport is not the entity that provides money for these disciplines. It is the finance ministry. There was a communique that was sent to us that all sporting disciplines must surrender or must provide their calendar of events, yearly events. This is the problem we have with these disciplines. Now, mind you, finance is dealing with the whole country. Finance is not only dealing with Ministry of Sport, no. So that's why if you want to present your budget, you must do that within the framework of 2 months, so that they can find ways as to how to generate income. To fund you, you go there and perform your duty. But some of the disciplines are so stubborn that they will sit until after these 2 months. After, even some had the God to even present a budget within 2 weeks to their competitions. So how do you want people to honor that kind of budget? No, we cannot. Of course, they used to write the ministry requesting for some amount of money to go out there and perform their responsibility. But now things have changed. Since the enactment of the National Sport Authority, I can't say yes, I'm the father of the sport in Sierra Leone. But by principle now, I think the NSA is in charge. They are now running sport. They are funding sport. They are doing everything. I now remain as an overseer. I supervise the entire process.
But again, from what I got from the director of sport, executive director of sport, is compliance. It's all about compliance. Present your budget within the framework of 2 months, so that we can review that budget, send it to finance, so finance can have time to look at it, to see how best they can provide funds for you. This is the difference between football and these other disciplines. Football, they have a calendar. Now I can sit here and tell you when we have matches and when we have to. That's why we don't have problem with football. There's a calendar for that. And they submit their budget even within a framework of 4 months. I can tell you that authoritatively. That's why we don't have problem with football. But these other associations, they are so stubborn. Up till now, not even 10 of them have submitted their calendar of events. I can tell you. You see, so we know these are the problems we are facing. And that's why when once, yes, we are doing our best. When once this document goes to finance, believe me, finance don't treat them with seriousness because they always flout the rules and regulations. So this is the case with volleyball. Yeah, as I speak, they are working on that. Still, they are working on those documents. They are finance. They have missed that competition. But again, you said NOC is not going to participate in this year's Olympic. I don't think that's true.
Not going to participate, they are preparing.
No, but listen, they are going. We were supposed to see the president today. Okay. But because something came up, it has been rescheduled for, I think, for next week.
So has the flag been mounted?
No, listen. I said we were supposed to see president today, but because of something happened, the first lady lost her younger brother, who happens to be a footballer. He was a player for Eastern Lions now, I think, is it FC UNC or Edwards? Edwards. Somebody told me he used to train with Edwards. So that's it. President didn't even work today, he didn't see anybody today. We are supposed to meet with him today with NOC. So the Japan thing is going to happen, yeah? Then the test in Guinea, I told you about conspiracy, right? So I can't comment on that. I don't have that medical background, but it's a football match. When you start losing a match from the start of examinations. So they did their test. They said our players are positive. What else can I say? I don't have that medical background. It's all about conspiracy. You see? So far, so I think I've exhausted the questions, right? The plot, okay. Players benefited. Let me tell you something. You see, there are so many issues surrounding about this money, land. Let me tell you something, guys. Let's be frank. Logically, the president didn't say go and beat Nigeria. I will give you 100 million euros or $10,000. He didn't say go beat Lesotho. He said go beat Benin. I will give each player 10 million. So logically, all players involved in winning the Benin match, I think those are the players that should benefit. Logically, let's look at it. Sure. So if we try to bring other players to benefit, it's not because we are so magnanimous, That's why we want to do that. But you see, there are so many issues surrounding about this money, land, and no. Just leave everything to the technical team. They will handle that. Yeah? If you benefit from the line, you will not benefit from the money. Because we have some lucky players, they were called up, they didn't even play, but they were fortunate, to be factored in having the $10,000 and the land. But be rest assured, I trust my technical, especially the coach. They are going to work it out. They will make sure everybody benefits. Because if we say we're only going to concentrate on those that went to Guinea to play the Benin match, because we have players that have played 4 matches. Because of injuries, they could not, play the final match with Benin. So what do? So we just have to bring all of them so that they could benefit. Not all of them that are going to benefit. You're going to get the land and the money now. You have to forgo either the money or you go for the land. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Coach, how many players did you present for the president?
Has the minister spoken?
Are we done?
I think I have dealt with that. Don't worry about how many players. I have said it.
Thank you very much, Minister Leone. With this, I wish to thank Honorable Alhaji Afcon, Dr. Tom Sise, Minister of Trade, Minister Leone, Minister of Sports.
Let me just respond to a couple of
you have a question?
Freight charges are actually what you pay to Freight charges are what you pay to shipping lines to bring your goods from wherever you buy to the port of destination. And like I told you, the freight charges have been going up recently. They still continue to go up. I mean, COVID has impacted so badly that it's just like with you doing your transport. If you have a bus that goes to Kenema and you take passengers from Freetown to Kenema, but you're finding it difficult to bring passengers back from Kenema to Freetown. I think those are some of the challenges actually. Because of COVID, productivity has reduced. So most ships that come down to West Africa will find it very difficult to get more cargo to take to wherever they're going. So I think that's one of the reasons, and of course the climate change requirements for the level of emission of certain. So you generally have some reduction of ship on the maritime line. So I think that's one thing. Local charges are actually what you pay to the port operators. Either you pay to Bolori for handling your cargo, or you pay to customs for the duties, or you pay to destination inspection. But generally, we have been monitoring all of those charges. We have ensured that they are kept at where they've been even prior to COVID. There are new charges coming, but we're engaging with them to see how those charges are lowered. But the major charges that are actually affecting prices of commodities is the freight charges. Of course, the Consumer Protection Act was passed. We're trying to put together the commission. We all know the relevance of that. It's going to help in a long way to ensure that some of the counterfeit products that we have on the shelves of shops are removed. And the commission that we're going to form is actually going to have a lot of teeth to bite. So those who fail to go by the rules are definitely going to be dealt with by the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. This brings us to the end of today's briefing, and I wish to take the opportunity to thank our friends in the media for availing their platforms to reach out to our people. I think it's been a time well spent, and I wish to thank all of you, Honorable Alaji Afcon, Dr. Tom Sise, Dr. Sandy, Mr. Nyerenke, and John Kista. And thanks to you, Mr. Ture, and your team for putting all of this together. Can we have a quick